All right, let's take a look at everybody's work. I'll start with the ones that are loose in here and then go through the folders one by one. So Lydia, let's take a look. Lydia, how was this assignment? Was it difficult or easy?
Yeah, as you can tell, I tried my best with it, but yeah, at the beginning it was kind of tricky for me to figure out, because most of the pictures that I was able to find, they were like really hard to look, because they were obvious, they're all muscular and stuff, and then the areas that I was looking for on the bodies were like technically lost. It was hard to find the points that you wanted to look for, so then we have good measurement.
It always is a little bit tough to find. It's easiest on muscular people, but the reason that we study the anatomy shapes is so that we know what to expect. And so then we have a big hint as what we need to be looking for, and we can usually find it that way. Just a basic note though first, when I'm looking at the structures underlying the muscles, such as the head, rib cage, and such, it looks like, whoa, 1 second, your arms, your upper arms are far too short. They need to be as long as a circle would be drawn from the shoulder, which hits this lower rib. So if this were to swing at a perfect circle, it will be able to just graze the bottom of this rib. So this one's pretty close to correct. It's just a little bit short, but this one is far too short.
Okay.
Right? And this one is far too short.
Okay.
And the same thing for all of these in the lower row, actually. So they all need to, if you were to relax them down, be able to just hit the end of the ribs. The one other thing I'll say is that the hip area is a bit too small, both in depth and in width. It needs to be the same width as the rib cage. Okay?
Okay.
Cool. Let's look at the actual muscles, though, and see what we can divine. So the latissimus shape in general looks like it's working, but only in one instance do I see it wider than the ribs, and the latissimus will usually be responsible for a lot of the silhouette shape of the back and the sides of the torso, and so you got to make sure that it goes outside and around the rib cage volume. Otherwise, the shape is being defined by the rib cage, and that would mean that the person is very, very skinny, skeletally skinny, right?
Okay.
So if you look at this chart right here, we can see this side shows bare ribs, maybe with some serratus muscle or something like that. But this side, instead of that, it comes and sweeps down in this triangular angle. That's the primary visual part of this latissimus muscle. Make sure that it is going outside that rib volume. Otherwise, you've got a very, very thin, almost emaciated person. Okay?
Okay.
So in this one where they've got the arms out, you're doing it, but in the other ones it all looks far too thin. Okay. Let's see, the trapezius. The only concern I have about that is the angle of the scapula. So for the trapezius, remember that it's supposed to make a kind of dagger shape as the shortcut shape. So we've got the handle part going up to the head, then the guard, which is going across the scapula, and then the blade. And your guard is too angled. See how high it's going? It's not flat across. Okay?
On what part exactly?
So,
Point it?
yeah. Well, and I have to zoom out, unfortunately, to make a notation. See this part right here? These are too angled compared to the image that I just had. Let me grab it there. Compared to this. See? Flatter across. Almost completely flat. There is a slight angle. If you have to exaggerate it to completely flat, then that's understandable, but just a tiny bit of upward angle, not a large amount. It will become greater if the arm reaches upward, but if the arm reaches downward, the only thing that could happen is for these to flatten out and for it to be even flatter across.
Okay.
So you did do the right thing when I'm looking at this one versus this one. but you're still making them far too angled to begin with. Okay. The trapezius looks fine. And yeah. Okay. So yeah, not trapezius, the rhombus. Rhombus, I'm sorry, the small green one. Yeah, the rhomboid is looking fine. Okay. So let's see a few more. It's generally the same thing a few times. The latissimus will also anchor a bit further down into the box. It dives straight between the buttocks, and it sort of anchors itself on the top where the triangle is, the sacral triangle, right? But you're making it a bit too thin as it enters that area. It's pretty substantial. It's going almost as far out as these two landmarks on the front for the bottom points of the ribs, and then sweeping further out. So make it pretty massive. It's almost like a cape. Okay. Cool. Let's see. Beyond that, I think it's just a lot of the same thing happening a few different times. Although some of the perspective on this one, I can't really tell what's going on. It looks almost as if the rib cage is twisting, as opposed to the ribs being able to do. It can't. The rib cage can't twist.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The rib cage is a solid mass. It can't twist. It can twist with respect to the hips or the skull, but it cannot twist itself. So the reason I say that is because we've got on the left-hand side of the rib cage here what appears to be the center line, and then the center line over here on the right. But we're still in the rib cage. The rib cage itself cannot do that. It would rip apart the structure that's protecting your organs if it did that. Right. The place that it can do that is between the rib cage and the pelvis. Right? That's a nice soft area with only one spinal column in the midst, right? Okay, so be careful about that if what you're seeing is a twist top bottom on the torso, the hips have to face one way, the rib cage has to face another. That's how that twist would be accomplished. Okay? Cool. Do you have any specific questions that I haven't covered already?
No, not really. I think for me it's mostly, position the points right where they need to be, so then everything is even. Like for instance, the one where your hand is to the left, that one, go to your left, no, up, the one up, that one. If you notice, it was a different pose, and unfortunately all the pictures that I was able to choose, they were all, big guys with masculine and stuff.
That's not a bad thing. That'll just make it easier to see the shapes, really. And they've got enough flexibility to move slightly, even though they're not going to be dancer lithe or anything like that. Okay. So it's not really that much of a bad thing, but you might specify female athletes or dancers in your next search if you want more live people. And you guys can always do that. Yeah.
I got some girls there. I put with the little tiny word that one underneath where you at. That's a girl. Mm-hmm.
It won't change very much usually, although this week we're doing abdominals and lower front torso. It will change the appearance of the muscles in this particular case, but for the most part, the only difference muscularly is going to be so slight that you wouldn't even know if you just had a skeletal muscular structure. I mean, it's going to be pretty small. Usually it's fat that makes that real difference. A little bit of proportion and some fat. Okay? Cool. By the way, heads are looking much better. The Loomis heads that you're doing, I can see the angle very clearly.
Yes, as I was going along, I noticed that they were coming easier for me to do.
This one's really great. First one's really great. Remember to trim off the sides of the circle, though.
I did. It's just too light.
This one is not. This one's just a round circle. Right? So when you're doing them straight, remove that section. Like I'm talking about this, that shouldn't be there anymore.
Oh, so actually remove it?
Yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. The only one that looks weird at all is this one. I think it got away from me on that one. Yeah.
It is weird.
Yeah, but, practice makes perfect. So,
Right.
very good. All right, thank you. Austin, we have yours as well in this primary group. Let's take a look. Cool, yeah. Be mindful of the angle of the scapula. Like on this very first one, I just noticed that you can see the angle of the scapula, but your scapula are not the same angle. And they're also pinched backward, but yours are deviating. Scapula. So Austin's in here, right? Yeah, he is. Do you see the difference I'm talking about? Because you might be thinking, like, this is still scapula down here, but this wouldn't be. It's just that. And this. Oh, I see you flashing, but I don't hear anything. I can't hear you for some reason. You guys aren't hearing him, are you?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Something's going up with the microphone. Well, see if you can sort it out, but I do see a little difference there. Let's see. So this one's an interesting case because she's got far, far wider hips than rib cage. And so that means the latissimus, which is defining the sides here, is literally hugging the rib cage in this case. So this is as close as you'll ever see it, really. And then we've got big old muscular guy. Cool. Very good. Yep. And you even got the little triangle that's visible between the trapezius and I always forget the stupid name, rhomboid muscles. Cool. Very good. Yeah, okay, scapula are working really well on this one. Let's see. Try to get some of the I'm gonna introduce this concept this week to you guys of getting cross contouring into your sketches because it's really, really necessary for making form. In this case, we can see a lot of raised portions on the model, and on your depiction, it's sort of a two-dimensional silhouette, which is fine. It's what I asked for, but we're going to try to start putting lines across it, kind of the way that I demonstrated in this image here, that show how it's raising up and away from the surface and kind of creating additional form across the body, because that's the real point of studying each of these muscles bit by bit, is to understand how they deform the surface and create shadows and light. Cool. Keep it a little bit straighter here. So on this female model here, on the lower portion of her back, so we're going to say this is latissimus. I think there's two S's. Latissimus, something like that. Keep a little straighter line between the armpit area down into the sacral triangle. It doesn't really scoop in until it's clear of this triangular shape right here. So you can see all of this is the latissimus. It is going to start to kind of tear off right here, and then that's a bit of obliques, but really her obliques are going to be this primarily. That's still going to kind of be latissimus. Cool. I'm looking at the rhomboid muscle and trying to decide, is that what's happening? I guess so. I guess it must be. It just looks a bit odd. I think the rhomboid muscle on her, yeah, we just are not seeing, we're seeing the trapezius instead. That's what this has got to be. But then there's this egg formation here. And I'm trying to decide, where are her scapula? I think her scapula have to be at this crevice right here. They're right here and here, aiming up this way, aiming up that way, which means that this is one of the teres muscles. Same for that. Right behind it, though, I don't think that's rhomboid muscle. I think that's got to be the Trapezius. I think so. It's a little tough to tell on her because obviously she's got a lot of muscle definition. She's also got low body fat too. And so the combination makes somewhat alien shapes sometimes. When you start to look at a person, the very, very fit people sometimes start to look a bit strange. Almost as strange as the perfectly smooth people who have no muscle definition at all. This guy over here is hitting a kind of happy medium, though. He looks like he's hydrated enough and has muscle definition enough that we can tell just about what everything is without going to the crazy bodybuilder level. Same thing for her. She's pretty thin. Same thing for him, actually. But you can still see some muscle definition, whereas with her, you can't really see anything at all. So that's the point at which it starts to get very difficult. Okay. He's got some sort of strange nodule here on the bottom of his scapula, which is a bit odd. Although, strangely, he seems to have a developed rhomboid muscle and no trapezius, which is the first time I've seen that. Usually the trapezius is the first thing that you'll notice because it's a lot easier to get a little muscle definition in there. But no, for him, he's got these. Kind of interesting. Also, just very strange, a big kind of void in the center of his lower back here, where the erector spinae would be going up and down, and where normally the latissimus would start to be prevalent, but we're not really seeing that. This is the latissimus here, heading off to this side to make the sweeping angle on the side, but I just don't see any erector muscle at all, so it's almost like he's got this void in the center of his back. Very strange. You can see the difference between him and her, or him, where he's got, a lot of developed erector muscle. That's normally what you'd see. Even she has a little bit. You can see this cleft and these two bulges. Right? So for her, she's another very skinny one, but there's the latissimus heading off in this direction. We've got a pinch here of just kind of skin and fat coinciding with an oblique. And it just about comes in right here. Right there. Okay. Not too bad. Well, Austin, if you don't get the mic working, at least type how this went for you if you had any problems or anything. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it went alright.
Cool.
I had a problem especially finding the top of the latissimus.
Yes. The top of the latissimus is sort of underneath the skin surface. You don't really see it. It doesn't make a defined line most of the time. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Although on this guy, we've probably got the best chance of finding it because that is latissimus right there and heading down, right, in this direction. That means that the top of it has to be like hugging right underneath here somewhere, but it's buried underneath all those other muscles. So you don't really need to worry about that too much. Okay. Did you see what I was talking about with the scapula up here?
Yeah, I was having trouble spotting those. And then I
Yeah.
started the easiest guy at the top.
Of the scapula, yeah. Yeah, the trapezius does run along that one. Sometimes this vertical angle can be a little tough because there's several different muscle groups doing different things. Rule of thumb is, and I think you've got it, they will separate apart when the arms are up and they'll pinch together when the arms are down. So I think you've got the general idea correct. Cool. All right. Anything in particular you want me to look at or had trouble with?
I guess the angle on the sides of the latissimus, I was confused. I thought it kind of wrapped around the rib cage a little bit.
It wraps around a little bit, but it also flares out a bit. So it wraps around on the lower reaches, right? It separates across, kind of goes around the oblique, and then starts to define the side of the body. But as you move up, it departs away from the rib cage and starts to define the armpit shape until it actually enters up into the humerus. So on some people, like this guy, that would be latissimus right there, but it's very close to his rib cage. On some of these very skinny females, it's going to be very hard to tell. I mean, there's just going to be some softness approaching the armpit. On this guy, it's obvious. Like, that's it right there. And this one, that's it right there as well. So, because guys, if we think about what is a masculine kind of silhouette, we can think of a sort of skinny base with a big triangular flaring top. The latissimus plays a big role. But with female forms, we think of an hourglass, and so it's a combination of latissimus and obliques, and then usually a little bit of fat as well on the upper reaches of the hips, which will create that kind of hourglass shape. That make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Very good. Thank you. All right, Alexander. I don't see him in the chat. Oh, I don't see anything in the folder. So, moving on. Kayla. Let's take a look. Kayla, one thing I've seen, I just want to make note right away. You need to use a smaller pen. So the size of your brush is too big and clunky for the size of drawing you're making. See how much, like, there's so many thick overlapping lines it becomes hard to tell what's what?
Yeah.
Thinner lines. Or draw twice as big. Right? Either one. But you need to choose one of those two. Okay? Okay. So let's take a look at these guys. So some of these, the latissimus, like we were talking about, the top of it, it needs to kind of hug underneath the scapula and these other muscles. But because this guy is bending forward, that means that line would come up quite a bit, and yours is sagging way down here, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay? So he's angling way up and forward, which means the top of the dagger shape is correctly positioned way up here, but it would shorten the blade of the dagger. That would be right about here. Alright? And then what we're seeing on him is a lot of teres muscles. He's got a lot of teres muscles, not very much trapezius, not very much latissimus either. Kind of strangely. The proportions of number 11 are very different from the subject. So she's got a thinner rectangular form, and you've got a very big blocky form. See the difference in shape?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the number one thing to get first. You got to have a similar shape to the subject for it to look anything like them, and it means that you're letting the muscles balloon out the form to much, much larger than she actually is. Okay? So in this case, they're going to head straight up. They're just two thin, practically straight lines. You can almost draw a straight line all the way up to where the buttocks separate. That would be the bottom of the sacral triangle right here. You can almost just go straight up to the shoulder, straight up to the shoulder this way. You can't always do that. Sometimes it's a curving line, an S curve or something like that, and then depending on how much muscular development is, it might more sharply move out and then up, but oftentimes that's what we're looking for. So what you've got here is, I don't know what's going on there. We shouldn't be doing that at all. Just go up the triangle until you hit the edge and then depart up the rest of the body. Are you trying to make it like wrap around the iliac crests? Okay, that's not how the iliac crests work. They're the sides of the box. Right? They're not the back of the box. So, like for instance here, the crests would be here and here. And yes, this does technically wrap around those. You don't often see that as the visible part of the latissimus though. So I wouldn't stress that too much. Were you looking at like this anatomical image? So a lot of this is just fascia, which is just connective tissue, or the bits that are holding it all together. The only parts that bulge out, though, are more centralized. Right? They tend to just go right down into here. So this bit that comes across, it's not really relevant to how the model is going to look, which is why we just simplify it into this triangle. Okay? So don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Usually the shapes that we're recommending are simple for a reason, because it makes it much easier to envision. So this one's a bit better. The perspective is kind of suffering. Like this box needs to be tucked way underneath in order to fit this guy's pelvis. But you've got a general representation of this form that looks about correct. Also make sure that you're observing the center lines of things, because it doesn't look like you're really sticking to the center line as would be defined by this ribcage egg. This kind of just looks like it vaguely meanders through the center of the form, but he is rotated to face his chest that way, which means that this is wrapping around to the right. Right, this center line. So the dagger shape goes here and here. That makes sense?
Yeah.
But yours is kind of like just covering the whole area almost evenly. In fact, there is an even distribution of space on the left half as there is on the right half, which would only happen if we were looking directly at his back. Okay?
Okay.
Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So it's just down to that basic egg sort of thing, right? So if I've got my egg and I have the back of it's going to rotate this way, the front's rotating that way. So this guy was facing off that way. So I make this ellipse, this wrapping line, which would be like the center back of that egg, right? The space here, this space is much tighter, and this space is now much wider. That's what creates that effect that it's been rotated over, that it's now facing a new direction. Right? So if I were to put on just some ghostly muscle here, then it would be something like this. Right? And then they're coming out, and they're coming out, and wrapping up and away, and wrapping up and away. Let's see how like the proportion of space is kept about the same. Much, much larger on the left, much smaller on the right. That's what I'm looking for. Right? And that's what I'm not seeing here. I'm seeing the same space. Okay? Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Oh no, something happened to this guy. What's up?
Question, does the muscle on top move?
The red one, trapezius?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't move out of place, right? None of them move out of place. The whole point of them is to squeeze, to draw the skeletal structure towards them, right? So what the trapezius does is it squeezes to raise the clavicle, scapula, to raise the shoulder area, essentially, right? So on the top, that's what it does. And then in between, it can squeeze to bring the scapula closer together. So what the trapezius does is help you flex your shoulders towards the back of your head and towards your ears. Okay?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So what happened with this guy? That no longer looks like a dagger.
I thought the muscles were what I'm looking at, which is, how his arm is moving.
But we're looking for a dagger shape for that trapezius. What you've drawn here is like there's a part of it, and then there's a big diamond. Were you a little confused about what those shapes were supposed to represent?
Yeah.
Okay, so that diamond is centered on the 7th cervical vertebra, which is right at the back of the neck here. So that diamond is going here and back down. It's almost completely hidden, but it's probably defining that cleft somewhat. Okay, 7th cervical vertebra, right at the base of the neck where it meets the ribs. Does that help to clarify this any?
Yeah.
So it means that one side of the dagger hilt is going here. The other side is over here, kind of disappearing. And then the blade is coming down and meeting in the middle somewhere here. Okay? He's got a very defined latissimus. Very easy to spot. Boom. Right there. Okay? Okay, so it looks like you're getting lost in the details a little bit. Try to simplify. Look for just the shortcut shapes that we discuss in lecture. And remember your basic three-dimensional construction. Don't let it balloon out of the body or change the shape at all. You're looking for them right there on the picture, and then to depict them right here on your drawing. Alright? Alright. Thank you. Yes, it does. Alright, Andy. How you doing, Andy?
Good.
Cool. Okay. So you're getting some of the same problem, but a completely different way. That your muscle shapes are flying off of the body entirely. They're flying off the skeletal structure. Right? So you're... Well, think about this. Just basic logic. That muscle has to attach to something, right?
Yeah.
What is it attached to? I mean, the correct answer right now is nothing. But the real answer would be the trapezius goes to the top of the scapula, here, and the rhombus goes to the sides of the scapula, here and here. Right? They all attach. If they don't attach, they don't move the body. I just realized this picture has the old positioning of this rhombus. Were you confused by that? The correct position is over here. It attaches.
It attaches.
Yep. All muscle attaches to skeleton. If it doesn't, it's not doing anything.
Okay.
Right? The whole point of muscle is to move skeleton and thereby move the body.
Oh.
Even the tiny muscles in your inner ear are moving tiny little bones. Yeah. And even a muscle like your tongue, which is essentially like flapping free on one side, it has to be anchored somewhere else, either to fascia that goes to skeleton or directly to skeleton.
Oh.
All right? So don't do that. No floating muscles. They shouldn't be flying away. They gotta be attached to skeleton. Okay. So I assume that this is going to happen on all of these drawings?
Oh, yes.
Oh no.
Focus on the points
That you saw in the photos? Okay, but here's the place where you went wrong in your reasoning. The photos show the surface. What we're studying is through the surface, underneath. You're only going to see a small portion of that on the surface. So it may very well have been that you saw a line here, but that's not what's going on inside. What's going on inside is that the muscle structure is going somewhere else, or definitely is going somewhere else. Okay? So you cannot reliably use surface markings to determine that is where the muscle is. No, that's only where it's visible. Okay? So instead, rely on the videos that Proco provides as well as the illustrations, anatomy charts, and the descriptions that I give. The latissimus anchors itself to this bone, to the upper arm bone, humerus. And it anchors itself to the sacral triangle and to a lesser degree the iliac crest down here. It must attach there. If it doesn't, it's flapping free. Make sense? Okay, and same thing with the trapezius. It must anchor itself to the skull, in lesser part to parts of the spine, and then to the upper portions of the iliac crest, and then again down to spine and probably rib cage down here as well. Okay?
Okay.
All right. I want to make sure that you get that, because otherwise all your muscles are going to be flapping free. It's not going to make any sense. Don't just rely on what you see in a photograph. You have to intuit that because I see a bump there, that's where the muscle is that I know the shape of. Okay?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, I just gotta be intuitive and
Okay.
know where the muscle should be at.
If you provide the pictures that you're looking at, then I can give you more detailed feedback, because now I'm only going off of your drawings. But if you have the reference pictures that you used next to these or in separate files, then I can tell you more definitively what happened. Okay? You still there?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I kind of get rid of the pictures
Well-
to make room for a hard drive.
Well, that's a bad idea, and also pictures are very small. So if your hard drive is that filled, you have a different problem. Okay, pictures are usually measured in kilobytes. Hard drives are measured in gigabytes. So it's very likely that you're not going to run out of space from just downloading a few pictures. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maria,
Yes.
how you doing?
Doing okay.
Okay. How did this assignment go?
I'm hoping I did it correctly. I tried to look at everything and make sure it was lined up as best as I could.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. You're a little bit high on the attachment of the latissimus, the purple. It needs to, yeah, it goes down about a fourth of the way down the humerus. Just think about when you raise your arm up, how much triangular muscle is going away from your torso and towards your arm in your armpit, and it's about that much. So you can kind of feel where your shoulder joint attaches on top of your arm, and then see the triangle that kind of juts out to the side. It's about that far away. Okay?
Okay, so it's probably where the two lines are meeting first, is where it probably
Oh, like around here? Yeah, it's around there. Yeah. Also, the latissimus doesn't define the entire silhouette, just the back portion. So on the left here, you've got this part, right? And it would be also this. Okay, that is also going to probably be latissimus there. But on the front, you're kind of doing it here. No, now we're looking at the front of the torso, and we're talking about different muscle groups, serratus, pectorals, and maybe even just rib cage, right? Where the latissimus is back here. It's right there.
So when I pulled the sketch and I put it over that,
Mhm.
should be around that area, not going towards the front.
It should be around this area, and the rib cage should be over here.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay, the rib cage is coming out more. That's probably
right, which means that it looks like this is superseding the rib cage.
okay.
So the rib cage is sticking out in front, this is behind. As in, like, to the left of it. Okay?
I understand.
The dagger shape of the trapezius is getting really bent out of shape, and I think it's because you're looking at this shape and thinking that that is scapula. Are you treating this like it's scapula?
No, the scapula is drawn there. It's just underneath.
I see it, but it's at almost the exact same angle as this triangle, which is why I was guessing that.
No, it's a little bit higher up where I got it.
Okay, so this right here is probably one of the corners of the scapula. And this would be the lower portion, this would be the triangular portion, then it comes straight off over here.
Oh, okay.
It's right about here. Is that what you thought you saw, or no?
No,
Okay.
a little bit lower.
In this shaded area?
No, not the shaded area.
Then where?
Right there, where that little egg is at, kind of there, in that like lower area. Yeah, I thought that was more of it.
Here to here?
Yes.
Way too far away from the center line.
Okay.
So you can see he's kind of pinching together his back, which means the scapula is going to be moving towards that center line, right? If he was rounding his back and we were getting less bulges, then the scapula would move away from the center line towards the front. You would also see kind of a hunching in his shoulders. But since he's not doing that, it's got to be towards the center.
Okay.
Okay, so they're way up here. And admittedly, there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. Like, this is a flat void, which is pretty odd. You know, it's neither developed muscle nor, you know, the other muscular shapes. I'm not sure why it looks so flat like that. It's kind of crazy. And we've got like some rippling thing going on over here on the other side of the back. But we can kind of guess that the scapula needs to be up here because, for one, it's got to attach to virtually the top of the shoulder joint because it defines that. And for another, he's pinching his back together, so those walls have to come together.
Okay.
So I'm going to say one side of the scapula is somewhere over here, right? And then this is a teres muscle. And then the other side is over here, and this is a teres muscle also.
Okay.
Okay, so the dagger shape is kind of here, right? Kind of there. Whereas yours is kind of going way down to the mid back, like the bottom of the mid back.
Okay.
Let's go to another page. Let's see what else we can find here. Okay, so this guy's almost a textbook. So we should be able to find clear placements for everything. Let's see, so we've got latissimus looks about right, kind of going rounding up here and then going across and defining this flared out shape. You're at the right point on the humerus now, so that's good. Your scapula are not doing the right thing though. Remember that the end point of the scapula is going to just about define the socket for the arm bone, the humerus.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
So
that's probably going to be the issue for most of them is the scapula is trying to figure out where it would be.
sure. When the arms are raised, it's got to be flared out and it's got to be pointing up. It's right about here. Right about there.
Okay.
Those bulges inside are the teres muscles, right? And then the reason I say it's right there is because here's the dagger shape of the trapezius, right? And you can almost kind of just tell that that is going to be rhomboid muscle right there. Going across. So the rhomboid's going here to here. Here's the 7th cervical vertebrae. So there's that shape. This is the dagger shape for the trapezius, at least up until we get to the socket of the shoulder. Then I guess just follow the silhouette. But the hilt part of the trapezius is kind of gone because he's raising his arms up so much and he's got pretty developed deltoid muscles. But the blade at least is still kind of visible. And then latissimus, yeah, I mean, you've basically got that one correct. Just kind of sweeping down underneath here. Okay. Remember that this diamond is centered on the 7th cervical vertebra right here. So that means the center of the diamond should be where the base of the neck attaches to the rib cage. So it'd be more like down here.
Okay.
Okay. Sports bra gets right in the way, but we can probably tell where certain things are.
Yeah, I have to try and guess what this.
Lowered arms, more vertical scapula. Right? Here's one right here. Goes right to the right spot. The other one covered by this, watermark, but somewhere right around here, I think. Can't quite tell. It looks like it goes as far as over here, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense. She is raising this slightly and pushing it forward, so it does round out a little bit. Latissimus we can see, even though it's interrupted by the sports bra, we can still kind of see it. And then rhomboid, I have no idea. Somewhere under there. But that's the most likely one to disappear is the rhomboid. Okay. Yeah, your shapes are getting kind of crazy. The green, right, needs to be 2 rhombuses.
Okay.
Okay, it needs to. That's what shape it is. It doesn't turn into a star or a triangle.
I was trying to get, because I remember that the point was supposed to reach with the 7. To figure out how the scapula worked.
Okay, the detective work should have told you the scapula are wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it's making that shape, okay, so that's, you got the correct anchor point, correct anchor point, correct anchor point. That means the scapula are wrong. It means they got to be rotated significantly away from the spine.
Okay.
In fact, one of them's right here. Boom. She's squeezed this one over so far, it's almost coinciding with this center line of muscle. And then the second one is right there.
Okay.
But they're virtually vertical. Do you kind of see this half tone that I can just trace across her shoulders like that?
Yes.
Like where a sort of low-cut neck on a dress would be? That's kind of the hilt line for the trapezius. And therefore the top of the scapulas.
Okay.
That line. Okay? Look at this guy. Pull up your pants, dude. In fact, don't, because now we can see all the dimples and stuff. Really developed latissimus. This guy actually has that straight to flaring triangular kind of muscular shape, but the latissimus is coming out and traveling up this way. So it's really hard to see underneath all that other stuff happening because this is a rector muscle, I believe, right here, and it's covering right over the top of that. But there it is. And then I think you've correctly identified the dagger shape. Yep, and this is a lot of foreshortening, but the diamond would be centered right here. The lower reach of that diamond would be right here, where my mouse is.
Oh, I didn't know that it would go that far down.
Yeah, you can kind of see because there's this flat area right here, but that is the 7th vertebra right there.
Okay.
And apparently the 8th and the 6th, because we can see them on him because he's bending so far down. Okay. Do you have any questions about any of this in particular? I think it's just the scapula.
It was just the scapula. I wasn't really sure how it rotated and how it worked. If it moved a lot, if it stood relatively in the same place. I was confused on that.
Okay. It freely slides over the surface of the rib cage, right? When it rotates, this corner moves the least. This inner top corner, right? The corner that moves the most would be the actual joint of the shoulder.
Okay.
Okay, so it can pinch in and out, and it can sort of, I'm trying to, I don't think you can really move it up and down the rib cage. You can just kind of slide it in and out, but you can rotate it. So you can slide towards the center line and away from the center line, and you can rotate it, and this point will stay mostly solid. But to actually move that innermost point upward and downward, I don't think you can really do that. Maybe a tiny bit. Way to find out. You're married, aren't you?
Yes.
So get your partner, no shirt, put your hand on their back, find their scapula, right? And then tell them to shrug their shoulders and feel where the scapula goes.
Okay.
Okay? Tell them raise your arms to level, move your arms forward like clapping, round your back as much as possible, reach straight up, all of those different directions, and feel where the scapula can move to.
Okay.
Easiest way to do it.
The way the triangle is facing, I guess that's the way I would put it. It would always be in that, like, it's straight on the top, and it goes kind of more straight down towards the back.
Sort of, yeah.
So it doesn't really rotate much.
It rotates only in the outer direction. So this corner will stay, this point will move outward, this point will move up.
Okay.
Why am I doing that instead of just drawing in Photoshop? I have Photoshop open right now. I could be drawing. Okay, so center line of the back, rib cage, egg, right? And we've got scapula that are kind of doing this and this. Okay? So what I'm saying is that the physical form of the scapula cannot really move up and down the egg, but it can rotate. These points don't move as much as the other ones. So in a rotated form, let me get a different color. It will rotate all the way out like this, right? And it can also move all the way out like this, or do both. So it could move all the way out there and then also rotate like that,
Yeah.
right? But keep that center point relatively stationary, unless what they're doing is, squeezing them together or rounding their back out. But every time you see this, what you know is that the attachment point of the arm has moved, which means that the arm is probably up somewhere because the scapula is up. And if the scapula is down, the arm is going to be somewhere over here or down. Okay? You can shrug your shoulders quite a bit and have the arm down, but you can't do the opposite. You can't lift your arm past this line very easily. In fact, you know what? I just realized that is more true. It's going to be in line with the scapula or below. In line with it or below, not really above it at all. You can get a tiny, tiny bit above it, but you shouldn't rely on that.
That helps a lot.
Okay? Cool. Use drawings to describe things. I have this whole program. Yeah. Just put your hands on your partner's back and just, have them shrug around. I'm sure they'll like the attention. Why not? Draw on them. Why not? What can they do?
Okay, so I need to work on my scapula, and that'll probably help with everything else.
Great. Yes. All right. Thank you.
And the diamond is bigger.
And the diamond is bigger. Yeah, it's centered on the 7th cervical vertebra.
Because I got the area where it's in somewhat right, but the size of it is way too small.
You got the area right, but not the centering. It doesn't look like it's centered on it either. So the center of this diamond is where the top of the rhomboid muscle attaches.
Okay.
I'm looking at my notes to determine. No, I was going to say that maybe there's a relationship between the diamond and the hilt, but it doesn't seem like there is. I don't see one anyway. Yeah. So forget that. Yeah. Center it, lower it, make it bigger.
Okay.
Cool. And on some of these guys you can actually see it. So you can see it on him, and you can see it on this guy. Right there. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stacy. Stacy, I did something on one of yours. You're here, right? Okay, I did this. I did this because I just saw little drawings on big old paper. I'm like, there's so much paper. Based on how your pencil lines look and the size of this this perforation, you're drawing real small. You got to draw bigger. Big, big, big. Twice as big, 3 times as big, 4 times as big. Big.
Yeah, I know some like long term.
On this size, this is like 8.5 by 11 paper. Rotate your notebook so that the binding is at the top and you're looking at it width-wise, and only draw 2 drawings per page. One big drawing on the left, one big drawing on the right. That'll give you ample space, and you'll get nice big drawings that you can see easily. Really, if we were teaching this in person, we'd be working on 11 by 17 paper, which is like 2 of these pieces of paper put together, and we would, if we were drawing something detailed only drawing like 2 drawings on that paper. So it would be like 1 per sheet. It's huge, gigantic. There's lots of benefits of drawing that big. Some of it is that it's way easier to control lines. Okay? So big. And I don't know why I did all that. I just saw the space and started doing it. It's a little hard to tell because of the size where things are going. You may be hugging the rib cage a little too much with the latissimus, although this one looks good right here. I think that the green one, the top of it definitely goes in the center of the diamond like we were just establishing. The sides of it go on the 2 scapula though, and I don't see the scapula. I don't know where they are. I don't see any scapula. Is it in there somewhere? That would be why it was hard to place it, because the scapula entirely decides where that muscle goes. They're the literal attachment point. Just to be clear for anybody following along, this one right here, that's the muscle we're talking about. Rhomboid. It is. Yep. And so, right there, here's the external connection point to the arm bone, right? The humerus. That's the triangle. And over here, 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 because it's lowered. So this one is more vertical. Okay. When you guys do your homework and stuff, do you have anatomy charts nearby? Oh, you should.
No.
You should. Okay, that's good. Do you guys remember the textbook recommendation? Because it's where I learned most of the stuff. Steve Hampton or Michael Hampton on this one. Figure Drawing, Design, and Invention. Yeah, have the textbook nearby because it will solve those problems for you. Or at least the Proco videos or some of his images. Because those are the solutions to these puzzles. It's the map you need.
I don't have a textbook.
It was only recommended, but it's on the Canvas course.
I do read the program video.
Okay. Well, consider getting the textbook because it's like expanding on all of those concepts 100-fold.
Is it an art book or just a textbook?
It's an art book. I don't know what you mean by that.
I mean, like you said, like.
Are there words in it? Yes. I'm just making fun of you. It's a good book. It's a really good one. Your latissimus looks way too small. It looks like as if it's hugging the rib cage and not going over to the arms. Is that what it's doing? Uh-oh. Okay. Get diagrams available the next time you're doing your work because you need the diagrams there to see this is the thing I'm looking for. Okay, there it is, or maybe I'm not sure. Probably, because the answer is kind of given to you when it's on a photograph, whereas when it's a diagram like this is the expected shape and function, devoid of like photographic details. It makes it a little bit more, pure. Or even, I kind of even like these, where it's a more realistic dissection of a person, because then you can see all of the little warts and motions and things that happen, like the fact that the trapezius does connect way over here might be relevant for some person's body, but for a lot of people's bodies it isn't, So I like anatomy charts as well as drawings. So yeah, I'd say I could go over these, but the big thing is get a chart so that everything goes to the right spot. Like the only other big one I'll say is that the top of the trapezius goes to the base of the skull in the back, and the sides go to that shoulder connection point. So they all anchor in skeleton somewhere. Do you have any questions about anything before I move to another person? Okay, draw big, have charts. Emily. I never see Emily in here, but she does all her work. So she must be watching somewhere. This guy's got like little sparkles going on over there. Let's see. So we've got the right connection points, it looks like. Although this goes up a bit higher, I believe. Yes. You can kind of see it in this guy going higher. Towards the back of the base of the skull. Really, that Loomis skull, that big bulbous round thing, is not how our skull is really shaped. There's a significant portion missing in the back here, where we just fill that in with like this big sphere. So that muscle needs to go all the way up to the back of the base of the skull. Triangle appears to be centered correctly. Attaching. It looks like the triangle is going way down here. It actually stops where the scapula stops. Pretty much, just right here. And those other bulges are probably going to be teres muscles that we didn't cover. A little bit more curvature and expansion beyond the rib cage for your latissimus, because it is going to define more of the back silhouette than the rib cage. You may be making your rib cage too big because you can see these bulges. That's not rib cage, that's latissimus muscle. So be sure to do that. This is a really great one where he's flexing this so much that it's creating a cleft in the back. Be a little bit more bold about squeezing these together, because that's what's happening right here. We've got one scapula there and the other one right here. They're very close together. So be a bit more bold. Squeeze them up. Let's see. Looks about right. We're going to try to get cross-contouring lines in the future to get more of this dimension, but I think you're placing it correctly. Something. I guess you're kind of doing it right. I think this one just needs to be a bit more vertical. This right hand scapula, but I think you're doing it right. A little bit too far down the humerus, though. Bring it back up a bit. It's only about the first fourth. All right. Let's see here. Okay, that's a bit weird for the latissimus shape. Really, and some of you guys may have missed it, that when it's coming across, it attaches lower on the humerus, and when it's coming up, it attaches higher. It actually flips its direction. So I kind of put that on a little bit late in my chart, but this line goes up, 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 and attaches here. This line goes over, 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 and attaches here. So it kind of flips its direction. This allows you to have a little bit more of a severe line traveling up and across. Okay. This guy's got back pain. Poor guy. Try to create a slightly straighter line towards the humerus. It's not going to bump up and down and up and down and up and down. A little bit more of a straight line. If you got to wrap it around something like the rib cage, that's fine, but only do it for that reason. Okay. Generally looking pretty good, though. Okay, all the way up to the skull. The triangle here is a bit bigger. It's centered on that point, but it goes all the way down to here because it creates that cleft. Like you can see, this shadow kind of extends down to the midpoint between the scapula, right about here. Scapula look a little bit odd. This angle here is pretty severe, and I think would only happen if he were shrugging his shoulders up, and he's actually forcing his shoulders down. So I think the scapula angle is more likely to be flat over, and probably the perspective of this line, this cleft right here, is just due to him rounding out his back a little bit and putting his head down. So don't angle this line way high up like that. Bring this a little bit higher, bring that over. Okay. Yeah, it's not too bad. Generally getting the right idea. This one's cool. She's got a lot of muscle definition. So she's pinching backward, but not extremely. So the scapula should be right about here. right about here. I think you're being misled by some of these other muscle bulges, and some of those are going to be teres muscles, but they're not all going to just define the scapula. So I think you're treating it like the scapula is way, way out here. I don't think it is. I think it's coming out more like this direction. Because she is squeezing her back towards us a little bit. So these two lines are going to come together, not so far apart. All right. Emily, I hope that helps you. Send me messages or something. Send a postcard sometime. I never hear from you. You're obviously following along and doing the work. I just don't know where you are or what you're doing. There we go. All right, James. James, you here? No, James. Okay. James needs to draw bigger too, and sharpen his pencils, because these are very rough little lines. With that said,
You're funny.
sorry, the latissimus needs to attach to the humerus. Right, it's got to go all the way out there and attach to it. A little bit bigger on the what did I say? Latissimus. Yeah, that's the correct one. A little bit bigger on the latissimus. Trapezius looks about right. I mean, you got the basic shape. And then the rhomboid, I cannot tell. I don't know where scapula is on any of these, so I really can't tell. I'm not so sure you've included scapula, and you needed to. Because, okay, so on a figure like this, just based on squinting my eyes and seeing kind of a shadow of a person, I would expect scapula way out here. And the green is nowhere near here, and I don't see a triangle shape out there. So I think you probably didn't include scapula. Okay, yeah, same sorts of things. This does not attach up here in the joint. It attaches to the arm, you got it coming all the way down here. It flares out a bit more. It creates a lot of the silhouette of the back shape. And then green, I have no idea what's happening, and you didn't include scapula. Include some scapula. Hey, you sharpened your pencils. All right. Man, that's a big difference. This is way better. Do this. It looks like you were looking at the anatomy chart a little bit as well, in that it does kind of do the shape of the bottom. Try to ignore that for the most part, because the shape that we care about anchors itself to the back and to a lesser extent the corners, and then kind of goes up diagonally towards the arms. You almost made it. You've left the rib cage. You got to go all the way out to those bones before we actually have it attaching to something. Keep the shape a bit simpler. It's going to come down diagonally. Yes, you are going to lose sight of it, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't just keep coming straight down right over here. Okay. Pretty good shape on the trapezius in general. I think it's because it's not going all the way out to the connection point of the arm bones that it looks a little bit anemic. This one looks a little bit better. This one looks interesting, but those different shapes, I'm having a tough time recognizing them as actual muscle groups. I'm sure there was some perspective happening with him lowering his head like that, but I can't quite recognize what's happening in this one. Something's a little off. Okay. Yeah, I think all the same kind of notes, basically. All right, there you go. James, same to you. Send me some messages. Tell me what's going on. Eric? Got Eric? We got you. All right, upper back drawings. Eric, your whole figure's flying apart, man. What's going on? It's all separate. Yeah. So what happened here? Like, okay, let me start here. Does this look right to you?
No.
Okay. What looks wrong?
It's floating.
It's floating. It's like ghosts kind of flying away. Okay, let me ask you this important question. Where is the rib cage shape? Oh man, did you ever? And here's the problem. All of these muscles live on the rib cage and the spine. So if you don't put a rib cage there, they've got nowhere to live. They've got nowhere to attach to.
Yeah, that's on me because I focus too much on the dagger, rhombus, and wings.
Yeah, you got the basic shapes, but they're really just moving along this egg, right? Without the egg, they don't have a home, right? They're just going to flap them along. So you got to put that rib cage shape in there. I've been telling most people they need to include the scapula, because without that, we don't have this lower portion of the dagger shape. We don't have the side connections of the rhomboid, right? But you need all the bone. We need a spine. We need a rib cage. We need scapula. Without those, we have no idea where anything's going. Actually, these are scapula, huh?
Yeah, I throw, or did I include all of them?
I don't think so. If there's a rib cage in here, I'm going to be shocked. Is there a rib cage in
I
it?
think I should update this
Yeah. So one part of this also, the lower bits here, right, that you've got on a scapula shape, those are virtually horizontal. They need to be virtually horizontal. The vertical part of the scapula, the part that we normally think of as shoulder blades when we look at someone's back, those are practically vertical. So you've got it the wrong way around. This one's going diagonal, this is vertical, and this is horizontal. No, it needs to be, that one is flat across, this one is vertical. Get an anatomy chart in front of your face before you do your homework next time. That's my song. That's my jingle, so that everybody can remember that that's an essential thing that you need to do. And just so you guys know, I have an anatomy chart on my wall in my office. Like, it's right up there in front of my computer. I just look up. I've also got a skeleton behind me that I can refer to whenever I want. I've got one anatomy book on the floor. Let me count the number of anatomy books I have in my office. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Should I count gesture drawing as anatomy?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, then we've got 8, 9, 10. That's all okay, well, I have books that have anatomy in them but are not anatomy books. You guys want the names of these books? I can just rattle them off because I'm looking right at them. Drawn to Life Part 1, Drawn to Life Part 2, Classic Human Anatomy, Classic Drawing Atelier, Anatomy and Drawing. What's that one? Oh, I can't read that one. There's a character design book. It's got anatomy in it. On the ground, I got Figure Drawing, Design and Invention. Where's the other one? Anatomy for the Artist by Gino Barclay or something like that. I got that one for free at a yard sale. Facial Expressions, because I do animation mostly, is down there. And maybe that was all of them. I don't know. You need books. Books got the answer. You know? Those are some of them. Those are like a truncated list, right? I've got anatomy books that I only look through for certain things because I've got probably too many anatomy books. But they all have different approaches and I like them for that reason. Like one of the big ones down there I only used for teaching because it has really nice big labeled illustrations. And then some of the other ones I only use for myself because they've got detailed approaches and lots of descriptive detail on how to do it, but I don't need to show it to anybody else, you know? And then I'm more attuned with animation and cartoon drawing, so a lot of these are more about the expressive side of anatomy and not about the mechanical side. So you need books. You need books. They'll help you. They'll give you answers.
You know, just an FYI, one thing that helps me a lot to do things more in detail is I take pictures of your lectures.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and you can go through the YouTube video and just pause it somewhere or something if you want to.
Yeah.
But really, I'm going to be the worst resource. I am pointing to all the other better resources, right? I'm going to walk you through it and explain things, But you shouldn't just use my explanation. I'm pointing at Proco because Proco's got really good explanations for everything. And so that's the reason I'm doing that. Let's go down to the current module just real quick. So anatomy of the front and sides. Just open those up real fast. So I'm pointing directly at, like, let's just look at abs, for instance, because not only does he have a great video where he walks you through it, but he's got stuff like this, you know, transverse muscle. Here's the rectus abdominis, internal and external. 4 different groups, add them up, you get abs. Here's some skeleton and 3D rendered muscle. You know, there's a joke. Here's a bunch of depictions of different levels of muscular development and fat on figures. Really great references. You need this stuff. You can't just rely on me. To rely on me is to starve yourself of knowledge, right? I'm going to do my best to demonstrate, but I'm learning from all these other guys, and he is, in his turn, learning from guys like Loomis that came before. So everybody needs reference. Look at that. We're looking at some Greek sculpture.
Your tummy?
Yes, the tummy. Yeah. Okay. So that's the big thing for the day. Look at reference. You guys need to look at reference. Everybody. And that's it. That's everybody. You guys good?
Yes.
Okay.
Gonna adjust some words.
Good. Let's look at just briefly the references and the assignments. We're going to cover the muscles of the front of the torso. And so lower front here, abdominal muscles are your stomach, right? Obliques are the sides that you can grab if you put your hands on your hips, on the top of your hip bones, all the way up to the lower reaches of your rib cage. Then on the upper torso we have pecs, which are the largest muscles on the front, left and right of your chest. We have breasts, which we need to look at and figure out how to draw if you want to hope to draw sexy ladies or even just normal ladies, right? And then serratus, which is one that we haven't covered, is sort of armpit area but below the 2 other muscles. Pecs are going to make the front part of the armpit. Serratus is like in between and below. You really only see serratus on a very in-shape person, but they look like little fingers kind of extending up the sides of the rib cage, which is why we think of them as serrations, serratus. Okay. I also have a brief thing about contrapposto, which is a concept of counter posture in the body. Have we talked about this already, or no?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then now is a good time to introduce it. I have a picture of people standing in line. I got a little punchy when I was writing this thing up, so I start to get sarcastic later in it, but don't mind that too much. These are normal people just waiting around, not really realizing they're being photographed. And here's the position relatively of their shoulder line versus their hip line. You can be very neutral, or most of the time one side will pinch while the other side extends. So her left shoulder is down, her right shoulder is up, so her hips do the opposite. This hip is up, this hip is down. Usually you can tell that because this leg will be straighter. The straight leg is taking on the weight, the bent leg is relaxed. Okay? This lady in the back was doing the same thing. High shoulder, high hip, low hip, and you can tell this is the straight load-bearing leg, this is the relaxed one. The blue is the center of their mass, usually around belly button, within the center of the body, and I drew a perfectly straight line down and showed on the ground where their center of mass would be. It's always going to be either between the feet or over 1 foot. If it's somewhere else, the person is running or falling over. Okay? So this lady over here, it's hard to tell, she has shifted her weight onto the right foot. The way you can tell is if you put a little dot and then draw straight down, this arrow hits her right foot. Okay, that's very, very common. Here's a bunch of stock photos of people. These are actors or models trying to look casual, and every single one of them fails at it in a different way, and it's spectacular. Not a single person looks casual. They all look fake casual. And then this guy just demonstrates the absolute worst of body posturing I've ever seen, and it's a thing of beauty, almost like a car wreck in slow motion. from too stiff to trying too hard to trying way too hard. It's amazing. Okay? But if you want to see real relaxed people, you have to get them photographed when they don't know they're being looked at. Everybody's so self-conscious. Even actors, even good actors can't do it. Okay, so read through that. That'll be a fun one. And that's what we're going to be covering this week. Okay, so your homework is going to be to draw the figures the same way we've been doing, including the abdominals, obliques, pecs, breasts if they have them, right? So if you draw males, you don't need to, and serratus if you can see it. So on someone without a lot of muscular development, probably not going to ever find that. But serratus will be visible on some of these bodybuilder guys. Okay? Any questions about that?
Are we gonna go over this
On Thursday. Yep.
Okay, Thursday. Okay, never mind. Yeah, today's Tuesday.
That's right. Review day today. Demo day Thursday. All right.
Okay.
Then do you guys want me to review anything, or do you think what we've done is enough already?
I just went on Amazon to get the anatomy chart. I need that.
Spectacular. Spectacular. Really quick, let's look at that first section. Drawing programs, hardware. Where did I put the recommendation?
I have a question.
Yeah.
About the lower muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Does it bend all the way down?
You're talking about latissimus?
Yeah.
Does it go all the way down to...
No, I mean bend, like bend your knees.
The purple muscle here
Yeah.
has nothing to do with your knees.
I know. I mean, the trapezius. Does it?
That's perfect.
When you.
Does it what? I mean, what the trapezius? You said?
Yeah.
The pink one?
No, the purple one.
Purple one is latissimus dorsi.
Okay.
So the latissimus is responsible for helping you to extend your arms downward forcefully and backwards a little bit. So if you were to grab onto the back of two chairs with your arms and then lift yourself off the ground, you would be using in part latissimus to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean.
What?
That's what I mean. While we're trying to reach something with your arms, this is trapezius,
Trapezius, like a trapeze in the circus.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to reach something with your arm, what?
It's okay. It's hard to me. It's hard to explain it. When a person is when someone's bent down, trapezius is moving.
If they, I mean, all the muscles move. They don't leave this area. They're attached. So their job is to move the basic structures. So your muscles, when they flex, will move the head structure, will move the rib cage, will move the pelvis, will move the arm muscles, the arm bones. That's what their job is. And anything else that's attached to that goes along for the ride. Does that make sense? To make it very simple, let's just look at this example then. If I have a bone, and don't worry what bone, just a bone, and I have another bone, like this, and I put a muscle on top, let's just say it's kind of like this, it has to attach to this other bone to do anything. Because if it doesn't, then it can't move that bone. So this would be a relaxed muscle right now, and it's attached, let's just say over here somewhere, and over here it's attached like right there. If I were to activate this muscle, then what happens is it shortens its length and it gets bulgier, right? So it would get fatter like this, and also the length would get shorter. Now what's going to happen to the bone if that happens? It's going to rotate up. It has to. Because if it doesn't, we've got a problem. Right? So it's going to rotate up, and now this attachment point, which was there, right, it's going to rotate up too. It's going to be something like this. Right? This is the basic way that a bicep works. So on your arm, if you have your arm straight and flat, and you put your fingers over the top of your upper arm, and then rotate your forearm up in a flex, you'll feel this muscle get bulgier as it's shortening. It's dragging the bone along with it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And you can even feel between your bulging, right, bicep and your forearm, something like this. There's going to be this little spot right here, right in this area, where you can find the tendon. You can feel the tendon, because this is the muscle right here, right? And it's still got to attach to that other bone, so there's this point where it's got to turn this hard corner. And if you put your fingers in here, you'll be able to feel a little tendon when you flex upward. And then if you relax it, that tendon kind of goes down and down and down until it disappears under the skin again.
Now, is that a tendon or a ligament?
You know what? I don't know the difference. I don't really know the difference. Let's see. Tendon. No, I don't need tendinitis. Tendon. A flexible but inelastic cord of strong fibrous collagen tissue attaching to a muscle or bone. And then what was the other word? A ligament? Ligament. A short band of tough, flexible, fibrous connective tissue which connects two bones or cartilages. Okay, so a ligament is flexible and a tendon is not. A tendon is the thing that's pulling on the ends of the muscle, apparently, and a ligament is more of like a sleeve or a connective tissue, but is not a part of the active muscle contraction, it seems.
Okay.
But probably
That's good to know.
probably I could read up a little on WebMD right here to figure out this stuff for sure, or Wikipedia, or start looking at some image results, because this is the exact kind of thing that is kind of fun to learn about, because I don't know the difference right now, but I could shortly. And so that's really good research to do. I've never thought about it as being important to my figure drawing, and maybe it isn't, but maybe there's something in here that will help me understand.
See, because I think the ligaments are the ones, like, for instance, right below the kneecap. I mean, the kneecap. Yeah, like those, the gray ones.
Oh.
I believe those are the ligaments.
I think that's cartilage. Well, okay, so the cartilage is here, and a lateral ligament is here. Well, this right here, between the two, that's cartilage.
Yeah.
So cartilage is like a pad. Cartilage is not quite bone and not quite soft tissue. It's sort of like
Between.
yeah, it's sort of like a rubber pad in between surfaces that otherwise would grate. And if you wear down your cartilage, then your bones grate together and it hurts a lot, and it makes physical scraping kind of feelings that are really unpleasant, especially in older people, or if you have just, really overworked your joints. Yeah, they're not labeling it tendon attached to muscle, ligament between bone areas, ligament flexible, tendon not, because muscle is already flexible. But that's cartilage, I believe. Yeah. Neat. Learning stuff every day. Alright, you guys? Do you guys want me to demonstrate or talk about anything else relevant to this? Is this helpful?
Yes, it is. I have
Yeah.
a question at the end.
Sure. I think it is the end. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I just wanted to ask you about Rhomboid 05.
Oh, okay.
If you did receive the folder on the area that you asked me to put into it, because
Okay.
the grade didn't change.
Yes. Alright. We'll go ahead and stop the recording, then we'll take a look at that. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't relevant to the lecture. Alright, you guys. Thank you.